And greetings, happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show. We are live and on demand here on BlazeTV, radio and podcast. I am Steve Deace. Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre are here with me as well. If you'd like to join us today, it's 888-900-3393. That's 888-900-3393. Steve at stevedeace.com is the email address. You can like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. That's DEACE. Parler at Steve Deace. And then our new YouTube channel is youtube.com/Steve Deace. Lots of freebies posted there every day that you can sample yourself and then share with others. Also, don't forget, my new book, due out December 15th. Pre-sales have now begun. You can go to barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, and pick up the sequel to my book, A Nefarious Plot, which we are now turning into a film. And you can get the sequel book, A Nefarious Carol, out for Christmas here in just a few months. Get the pre-sales going if you want to get that for you or someone you care about for Christmas. All right, coming up here today, a typical busy Tuesday. Fred Lucas of the Heritage Foundation is going to join us at the bottom of the hour as we look back on Russian collusion, impeachment. He has a new book out going inside those stories. We'll do that here at the bottom of the hour. Next hour, we are going to play Fake News or Not as we do, but we are going to do something we don't do very much anymore. We're going to go ahead and feature The Other America. Joe Biden came out, gave a speech yesterday, attempting to reset his campaign. Isn't that what a convention is for? You had a convention, and now you have to do a reset because you're on the wrong side of the issues right now. We'll get into that here more in a moment. But we're going to look at some of the clips from Democrat presidential nominee Joe Biden's, it was a press conference. It was before the press. He read off a teleprompter poorly, but dementia-riddled people do. And that's not a slam, it's sad, actually. And took no questions, as Joe is wont to do, and then walked off. Okay? But we're going to get into some of those clips and play Fake News or Not with them next hour. And then for Pop Culture Tuesday, we were already going to address this topic anyway. And then the president weighed in with quite the tweet just a little while ago that he just got off the phone with Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren, who, by the way, back in June was telling Yahoo Sports that he was hoping that he could organize Big Ten athletes to sway the next presidential election. And I don't know, somebody you all know might have made sure some people at the Trump campaign were aware of that story. Not mentioning any names. I don't want to out anybody. But somebody you're all quite fond of, and I got to admit, I kind of adore him myself, made very sure the Trump campaign was aware that the commissioner of the Big Ten Conference was openly discussing mobilizing voters against him a couple of months ago. And lo and behold, the president has a conversation with Kevin Warren, tweets about it today. I urged him, hey, time to play some football. It's safe. Get going immediately in the Big Ten. We're going to get into that. And we're going to look at some of the numbers in the Big Ten Conference. Some of the latest virus numbers and ask you, how much lower can these possibly go without herd immunity, which was science on this third rock from the sun for 7,000 years, but suddenly now is voodoo.
It's a controversial strategy.
Yes. Without herd immunity or a meaningful vaccine that gets you to herd immunity. I don't mean like a therapeutic one, like a meaningful one. Like where we get rid of smallpox and defeat polio, that kind of stuff. Not the therapeutics we put out today. Our local grocer has a sign in the parking lot. Guys, I know I'm sounding like Todd. I am pro-vaccine. I'm just anti-BS, okay? I am anti-BS, all right? Have you guys seen the sign? Aaron, you live in my hood. Have you seen the sign at the local Hy-Vee parking lot where you pull in, now more accurate, or what's it say, more efficient shingles vaccine? One that works. We now have a shingles, previously We were urging you to come into our drugstore and get a shingles vaccine that did not work. But we now want, ladies and gentlemen, have you seen these signs in the parking lot? We now have a shingles vaccine that we think works.
I can only think that your reaction was the same reaction you gave me when I said I like doing less work for more pay just as much as the next guy before the show today.
Yes.
Do you mean that the vaccine was not efficient before?
Yes.
It wasn't working before?
When I pulled in there the other day, it was my wife's birthday. I decided to go buy some impromptu flowers. I see that sign in the parking lot. I slammed on my brakes. Thankfully, no one was behind me, wanting to know if I read that right. This shingles vaccine works now. I mean, that's what the sign says. All right, so without a meaningful vaccine, I'm not coming to your side.
This is my best, Mr. Burns. Excellent.
But I'm with you on the BS around a lot of this big pharma stuff. I'm with you on that. All right, so without a meaningful vaccine, without herd immunity, tell me how we get these numbers any lower in an area as densely populated as the Big Ten footprint. With cities like Detroit, Chicago, Minneapolis, they have a few people. New Jersey's the most densely populated state in the country. Maryland's number 5. All of these states are in our footprint. How do we get the numbers any lower than this without a vaccine or without natural herd immunity? How do we do it?
Karen's on the case. Telling Iowa State's athletic director and allowing fans, and you're going to die, just ratcheting it up to 11, Steve. She's on it.
Indeed. Someone you know and adore is going to make sure he's at that very first Iowa State football game, by the way. But before we get to all of that, here's Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by following, the science. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, along with the newest member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, Stanford's Dr. Scott Atlas, went off yesterday as an appeals court upheld Florida's decision to reopen their schools after a lawsuit was filed by teachers in the state against reopening.
We will never do any of these lockdowns again. And I hear people say they'll shut down the country. And honestly, I cringe because we know places that have done that. The most draconian lockdown in the world has been Peru, military enforced since March. They have the highest per capita mortality in the world from COVID. And at best, what a lockdown will do is delay. It does not reduce the ultimate mortality. But I think Dr. Alice would agree. It creates a lot of other problems.
Dr. Scott Atlas, the subject of a recent hit piece by the Washington Post, discussed the dangers of keeping schools closed.
Children have no serious risk from this disease. It's very safe for them. They can handle this. And many of them, most of them, in fact, the majority of them are asymptomatic, even if they test positive. That's point number one. Point number two, we can never underemphasize that when you close schools to in-person learning, it is enormously destructive. Not just the fact that reading skills go down 30%, math skills go down 50%. Distance learning alone is a failure. Someone alluded up here to these other things like the health risks to children. That's where we discover vision or hearing needs. That's where child abuse is reported. That's the number one agency where child abuse is reported. So it's an estimated 215,000 cases of child abuse were never visible and never reported just during the first 2 months of the lockdown. These are serious, enormous problems with not having in-person schools.
Moving on, Joe Biden got out of his basement and headed to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
COVID has taken this year, just since the outbreak, has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's the lives. When you think about it, more lives this year than any other year for the past 100 years.
More on that later in the show. In completely unrelated news, a national poll from Emerson College published yesterday shows the presidential race tightening. The poll shows Biden leading President Trump 49% to 47%. That same poll shows Trump picking up nearly 20% of the black vote, nearly 40% of the Hispanic vote, and leading Biden among the white vote 56 to 41%. Demonstrations happened last night in Los Angeles after police shot a black man who was armed with a handgun. Police police had stopped the man for a traffic violation, after which the man became belligerent and tussled with the officers. Rioting and vandalism once again gripped downtown Portland, Oregon last night. Who the hell knows what they're still rioting about? But this time they seem to be especially upset with Mayor Ted Wheeler for some reason, as they shot off fireworks outside his downtown condo and set fires in the streets. President Trump spoke with Laura Ingraham yesterday regarding Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization. You remember pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. That was the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter. I said, that's a terrible name. It's so discriminatory. It's bad for black people. It's bad for everybody.
President Trump also defended Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old who shot and killed 2 rioters in self-defense in Kenosha, Wisconsin last week.
That was an interesting situation. You saw the same tape as I saw. And he was trying to get away from them, I guess, it looks like. And he fell. And then they very violently attacked him. And it was something that we're looking at right now, and it's under investigation. But I guess he was in very big trouble. He would have been. He probably would have been killed. But it's under investigation.
And finally, the country lost one of its more inspirational actors over the weekend. Chadwick Boseman was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer in 2016. But kept filming and working the last few years. In his career, Boseman portrayed Jackie Robinson, James Brown, Thurgood Marshall, and most recently was renowned for his portrayal of T'Challa in the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Black Panther. That final role as Black Panther was a supreme inspiration to untold numbers as he became the first black superhero to star in his own film. Before his passing, The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon allowed fans of the movie to record what they thought would be a video message to the actor, thanking him for his amazing and inspirational portrayal of T'Challa.
I actually saw it 4 times. I do have a life, but I saw it 4 times. I saw it once with my girlfriend. Also, I want to thank you for having your suit on for most of the movie, because when your chest was out, she was getting a little excited and I felt insecure, so thank you for that. And it means a lot to see a movie that's not like a black movie, but it's just a great American superhero movie with, people that look like me, so thank you. Okay. What's going on, bro? I'm glad that you got your muscles covered again. I'm glad that you got your muscles covered, because if you would have been all brolic and stuff, it would have been weird, because my girl would have seen it and be like, why didn't you get his number? So I'm glad.
And that's what happened while we were away.
That video, that whole video, I saw that. First thing I saw on my Twitter feed when I got up Saturday morning was that video. There's a young woman that is a graduate of Howard University, is just the same as Chadwick Boseman was. There's a mom who brings her young son. She's a single mom, brings her son to see the film, looking for powerful, strong, masculine role models. I mean, that whole video, it's tough to get your attention and keep your attention with a 9 or 10 minute video these days. I was enthralled by the entire thing. And it just made me smile first thing in the morning. And let's face it, there's a lot of things these days that don't make you smile first thing in the morning. So just the guy made 10 movies after being diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer, including those MCU movies that are physically demanding. He's done all kinds of humanitarian work. I mean, just a dude, man. That was just a dude. And if you've never seen his portrayal of Jackie Robinson alongside Harrison Ford as Branch Rickey in 42, I'm a big Jackie Robinson guy. Just incredible. The movie's incredible. And you know why I love Jackie Robinson? Because he was a soldier, had some disciplinary issues in the military, very fiery, and found a way to tame the worst edges of that at a time that he could not afford to be provoked in order to blaze a trail. And I've tried to emulate that many times, most of them unsuccessfully, right? But a huge fan of his work. I mean, played Floyd Little, Ernie Davis, Jim Brown, right? Was he Jim Brown? Or was he Floyd Little? I can't remember. Jackie Robinson, Thurgood Marshall. See a trend there? I mean, he made a specialty out of playing folks that were racial pioneers in their day. So, gone obviously way too soon. Something else that is making me smile right now guys, I got to just be straight up, man. Trump is cash money right now. I mean, the messaging you saw in that montage, that's prime rib, brother. I mean, that is grade A Angus beef, grass-fed, because cows don't eat corn. You never driven down a farm, seen a farm on the side of the road. Hey, Mom, look, the cows are eating corn. No, they eat grass. All right? I mean, that messaging and stuff on BLM, on what's going on right now, that's the sweet spot of the bat, Todd. That's when the pitch is thrown and it feels like the bat is an extension of your hand and it's just plush. And what I like about it is he's actually, these are examples of him now advancing our narrative. One of the things that's been exceedingly uncomfortable to me all along about his candidacy and then into his presidency. It was much worse during his candidacy, but then during his presidency, he began doing things that we liked. But then when he did stuff we didn't like, there was this expectation that we allow him to co-opt our narrative. At least you felt that pressure, right?
Yeah.
He is now a proxy for our narrative. And that is powerful messaging. And if he stays on that message, I believe he's going to win. If you look at that Emerson poll, not since 1960 when Jackie Robinson endorsed Richard Nixon, by the way. And Richard Nixon received 32% of the black vote in that election, which for those of us that are alive today, a Republican getting 32% of the black vote seems like that never happened, right? In 1960, people were like, Richard Nixon lost because he only got 32% of the black vote.
You know who one of those black people were? Jackie Robinson.
I just said, because that was the last time, when Jackie Robinson endorsed Richard Nixon, correct. In 1960, that was an upset that a Republican only received that amount of the black vote. And it probably did sway the election as well as some chicanery in the city of Chicago. But that's how long it's been since a Republican has gotten more than 15% of the black vote. Emerson is forecasting 19% for Trump in its first full post-convention poll. It also has Trump at 37% amongst Hispanic voters. I know you guys have all been told that George W. Bush, because he spoke Spanish, was very, very popular with Hispanics. He got 40% of the Hispanic vote in 2000, his first election. That's the highest a Republican has received since we began charting Hispanic voting demographics. I think it was 1976, I want to say, is the first election we started doing that. He got 40%. That was his high watermark. Okay? So if Trump were to get 37% of the Hispanic vote, that would tie Ronald Reagan's reelect in 1984 for the second highest percentage of Hispanic voters any Republican presidential candidate has received. So if he's going to get a historic amount of black voters, a historic amount of Hispanic voters, and win whites by 15 points, guys, he is not only going to win the Electoral College confidently or comfortably, he's going to win the popular vote with those numbers. Unless California just does a mail-in vote and, Trump loses 81-19 or something like that. All right. But outside of those specific states where they're mail-in voting now, and they will be mail-in voting until Valentine's Day. For EVs, y'all. That's right. Okay, so it's going to take something. There's no way you don't win the popular vote if you're a Republican winning white voters by 15 points. And they're not the majority, the super majority they used to be. They're still 66% of the electorate. So you're going to win 66% of the electorate by 15 points. You're going to get a historic number of Hispanics, and you're going to get a historic number of black voters. You're not losing the popular vote unless we're just we're on our seventh round of mailbags. The California voting office is like the final scene of Miracle on 34th Street. Guys, we got more bags. We found some more. That's what it would take to not win the popular vote. But if he does that, he's going to win the Electoral College more comfortably than he did 4 years ago. You're looking at probably flipping states now like a Minnesota, for example. There's no way that he won't win re-election with those kinds of numbers. And I think the fact that you saw Biden come out yesterday and attempt to pivot his campaign after his own convention indicates they know this. Remember what I've told you before. If you want to know, what the private polling says, and if you've never been in a campaign, it's hard for me to explain to you how much better the private polling is. It's not that it's necessarily more accurate as much as it's more thorough, because any poll, its final result is the weighting of the pollster himself, right? But the amount of information that is available to you. Like in the Cruz campaign, man, we could find out what church you went to. Okay? I mean, the amount of information that is available to you that you can then quantify is so much more than even what you're going to get out of the best of public polls.
And is it true that while publicly they'll be spinning, oh, everything's great no matter what, privately, aren't they probably brutally honest with themselves?
Yes, especially with not all campaigns want that.
They don't.
Frankly, there have been times, I know for a fact, that Trump's re-elect campaign has felt like they could not be honest with him when things were looking really bleak in April and May, for example. Okay. Now, with the Biden campaign, you don't have to worry about that because the Biden campaign isn't about Joe Biden. He's obviously not calling the shots. He's a proxy. We all know that, right?
But it does seem like they're being brutally honest with themselves.
So if you can see their own behavior, look at the behavior of the campaigns. Now, I said this a few months ago when Trump was talking about, hey, our numbers are great. Well, then why are you firing Brad Parscale, right?
Right.
Look at it's same, and I've used the analogy of college football recruiting before. The recruiting services at Rivals, 24/7, ESPN, they're better than they ever used to be, but they're still not as knowledgeable as the coaches themselves are, right?
Right.
So if you want to, if you really want to know how good a player is, look at the schools recruiting him even more so than what his rating is. Who do you think knows more about how good a player is? Nick Saban or Mike Farrell at Rivals? And Mike Farrell will tell you Nick Saban knows more than me, right? Similarly, look at the behavior of the campaigns. They will tell you where they think they are. They will tell you. I mean, the fact that Kellyanne Conway was on CNN at 5 o'clock on election night, blaming the RNC for not sharing their data with the election campaign, tells you that their data showed them they were going to lose that night. I mean, I had somebody who works for Fox News on election night feeding me the internal campaign data from the Trump campaign that they gave to Fox News. They thought they were going to lose. They were very surprised on election night that they won. All right? Look at their behavior. They'll tell you. I mean, they spin in front of the camera like the movie Irresistible, right? Where Steve Carell looks at what's-her-face, who's playing a poor knockoff on Kellyanne Conway, and says, crap, it's true now because she said it.
It's my favorite line from the movie.
Right. Because she said it on camera, it's true now. But don't look at what they say, look at what they do. Their behavior will tell you. And the fact that they feel like they've got to reboot Biden a week after the convention indicates the ground is shrinking underneath their feet. And what's happened is the environment has changed. And it didn't change by anything the Republicans did. You can't really change an environment, folks. I've told you that for years. You don't change an environment, it changes you. Old man go out there and yell at cloud all he wants. You ain't the cloud. So the environment in this country changed because of Kenosha, Wisconsin. And it changed overnight. Overnight, basically the American people just said, you know what, dude, this is Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the guy's a rapist, maybe? Really? Hey, totally agree. Shouldn't have shot the guy 7 times in the back, maybe. But maybe if you're already have a warrant for your arrest for sexual assault and your girlfriend doesn't want you back there, don't show up. You know, I just think collectively, that instinctive America that we talked about yesterday just said, you know what, dude, so We had the virus numbers go low, then we had all these riots, and we had to lock down again. Virus numbers go low, and now we're going to do all these. We're going to reset. No, my kid's got to go to school. I want my life back. It's September almost. Time to move on. All right, we gave you 6 months. Time to move on with it. And instinctively, the American people just said, we're not running it back. We're not doing a replay of what went on this summer. Nope. The answer is just no. And the environment just changed immediately. And the problem was the Democrats had their convention already in the can. Most of it was canned because of the virtual aspect. And they played to their base like they did the whole primary. Well, to their most left base, they did. They just did a replay of that. So they put their foot forward in front of the American people before the environment changed, and then the environment changed. And it changed into an issue conversation that fits Trump. And unlike when we were having this conversation in June, this time he did more than tweet. He acted. He went right at the Portland mayor, one-on-one. Went right at the Wisconsin governor one-on-one, and then the next day won that argument and sent the troops in. And you'll notice Kenosha's been fairly quiet ever since then. He went right at the Big Ten commissioner, Kevin Warren. We're not just passively tweeting stuff now. Now we're acting like a president. We're using the power of the bully pulpit and of the power I also wield in actuality. Now I'm seen as your proxy pushing back against this. And people are like, that's what we want. And now the Democrats are in trouble. Trump was never going to win if the argument was virus paranoia. He can't win. He can't mask down enough. He can't lock down enough because his own base is going to fight him the whole time. And you did. You fought him the whole time. He was often messaging against his base. Remember when he was out there, one day we're doing a reopening presser. Georgia reopens, and then the next day I'm blasting Georgia for recklessly, right? He can't win that argument. He can't get to Joe Biden's left on that. But Joe Biden can't win this argument, provided Trump leads on it. He can't ever get to Trump's right. His own base will fight him on trying to be whole hardcore law and order. His own base will fight him on that. I believe in the next 63 days, that's how many days we have left, they're going to try to contrive an event. And I tried to think to myself this morning, if I was on their team, what can I do to see if I could shift the environment? Or perceive that the environment has shifted. Because a lot of times, because of their dominance of the media, they convince a lot of Republicans the environment has shifted when it hasn't. And then the Republicans, just like lemmings, go along with it. This is where we've gotten phrases in the past like silent majority, forgotten Americans, because Republicans just think, hey, that's what's trending on Politico today. It's all over the networks. That's where everybody's at. And the people that would ever think of voting for them in the rest of the country are like, what's a Politico? We don't know. We don't read that. We just know we don't want riots in the suburbs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And so this is how they're going to try to contrive to Republicans that the environment has shifted. I believe they're going to conjure up panic porn on a second wave to try to get all the schools to shut down again in about a month. And I think that's the only play they have left. They'll drag the teacher unions, which they put back in the closet because they were killing them. They're going to drag them all out. Maybe mass sit-ins, demonstrations of teachers who walk off the job, things of that nature. And it's going to be up to Trump now to push through this in ways he didn't push through after the 15 days to flatten the curve expired at the 1st of April. And he needs to look at what Ron DeSantis did yesterday with Scott Atlas, that press conference, man. Dude, that was Georgia Tech, Cumberland College, 222-0. They just went out there and just routed them. Like nobody scored. Like they didn't get a first down. I mean, that was just a pile driving. That was a political assassination is what that was. What Ron DeSantis and Scott Atlas did yesterday. And the Trump White House better be prepared this time to push through this, not believe that that's what the environment is, and say, hey, tell you what, you guys do this, you're not getting any funding from us. You'll stop your funding right now. Direct Treasury, you won't get funding right now. Not happening. Because I think this is going to be the final play they're going to do to see if they can perceive or get their media to concoct an idea that they have artificially changed the environment. That's my prediction of the final play they will make to try to get their momentum back in the next 63 days. We'll have more on that a little bit later on when we come back. Fred Lucas from Heritage Foundation is going to join us about his new book. Stay tuned. Did you know the average American has 97 points they can add to their credit score, yet has no idea how to get to them? Well, that's where ScoreMaster comes in. It's the new credit science that super boosts your credit score because it empowers you. Forget raising your credit score just a few points. The average ScoreMaster user can raise their score 61 points in 20 days or less because you're given the path for how to get there, why your score is where it's at, and then how you can correct it and how long it will take. You know, the kind of information you don't typically get when they deny you the loan or maybe even the job nowadays because your credit score is too low. And this works for businesses as well. If you want to make sure that you've got credit, that's essential for you to have capital to invest and grow your business. ScoreMaster can help you get that as well. Enroll in minutes and see how many plus points ScoreMaster can add to your credit score. Visit scoremaster.com/Steve. Again, that's scoremaster.com/Steve. One more time. Scoremaster.com/Steve. I keep this on my computer, even my laptop here that I use for the show. I check it all the time. It is fascinating to see how much different this process is when that information is open, transparent, available. You mean like when CDC finally starts stratifying their data and you see that people between the ages of 15 and 24 are 0.2% of COVID-19 deaths in the country, yet 12.9% of the population. And so why is any high school, college in America closed? Why are we not playing high school, college sports with those numbers everywhere in America? Like when CDC points out that only 6% of the deaths were strictly from COVID or of COVID, as opposed to with, meaning COVID was one of a comorbidity. And in the other 94% of deaths, they had an average of 2.1 other comorbidities. See how powerful that transparency is. When the New York Times blows the whistle over the weekend on, well, there were conservative media people and figures online who blew the whistle on our testing practices all along. They just got banned from social media when they did. But the New York Times finally does it and says, hey, 40 to 90% of our testing, depending on where you live in the country, it's somewhere between 40 and 90% everywhere, all 50 states, depending on what your sensitivity level is, are false positives. That's why you see stories out of Newsweek yesterday. All these positive tests at the University of Alabama, no symptoms, no hospitalizations, because a whole bunch of people that are not contagious, maybe have a viral artifact, are being given positive tests right now. Transparency is empowering. A bunch of Nebraska football players go into a court of law and say to the Big Ten, we kind of want to see your notes. We kind of want to see where you guys are coming from. And lo and behold, now we're getting all kinds of information. And Kevin Warren, the commissioner of the Big Ten, has gone from proudly telling Yahoo he's going to organize Big Ten players to sway the next presidential election to, yes, Mr. President, I'll happily take your call. Can you help me get out of this mess? Right? Transparency wins. A new book wants to provide some transparency on one of the more shadowy stories that we have probably ever covered on this show. Abuse of power inside the 3-year campaign to impeach Donald Trump. The author, Fred Lucas, is here with us from the Heritage Foundation. Fred, it's good to have you with us here on The Blaze. How are you?
Thanks for having me on, Steve.
You bet, brother. So first of all, tell us why you chose to tackle this topic.
Well, it was something I covered pretty in depth as it was happening. And as much as anything, I wanted to look into this as a historical story. We had an impeachment trial in the Senate during an election year and it was based on pretty hazy charges that did not directly allege any illegal conduct. And want to see, how did we get there? And the truth is, it did not start with a Ukraine phone call.
One of the things you point out in your book that I think people are going to find fascinating, in fact, Fox actually wrote about this angle that you put in your book as well, is that a lot of what we ended up getting out of this story in our media is because of internal Democratic Party politics, that essentially Adam Schiff thought that this could radicalize their base and mobilize it. Jerry Nadler, more of a grizzled veteran, was kind of moving at a traditional congressional snail's pace. And Schiff essentially outwitted him and radicalized this issue kind of in a way behind his back. Am I categorizing that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. Schiff was very ambitious. Nadler was a more traditional Democrat. He didn't like Trump. The book details that Trump and Nadler had a rivalry going back to New York politics when he was a developer and Nadler was in the state legislature. But Nadler, he wanted to move slowly on this, judiciously, and basically, we had Schiff, who was actually pretty close to Pelosi, and he was maneuvering in this. And we eventually saw that Nadler, under some pressure, he was facing a Democratic primary back home in his district. He didn't want the same thing that happened to him that happened to Joe Crowley with the ALC primary. The primary opponent was challenging him, saying he wasn't moving quickly enough on impeachment. And so we did see him start to talk a little bit more about impeachment, but then he had these hearings. The Mueller hearing, we all remember that. That did not
That was
go
a disaster.
Well.
Yep.
Right. That didn't go well for either the Intel Committee or the Judiciary Committee, but it went particularly bad for Nadler's committee. And then the Corey Lewandowski hearing, that was a train wreck.
He just trolled them the entire time. That was another disaster, right?
Exactly. And basically Schiff saw this as an opportunity to get in on the game. He wanted to lead the impeachment. And Pelosi was pretty well convinced after seeing Nadler's performance in these hearings that he was not the guy to do this.
So the idea, because the Pelosi angle, let's explore that a little bit here, Fred, because we saw her kind of come out and attempt to spank the squad in public a couple of years ago, right, when they were maybe getting a little too big for their britches, or that was last year, and branding the entire Democratic Party according to their antics. So the idea that is painted in left press that, Pelosi's the grizzled veteran here, the voice of reason here. What you're saying is based on your research that she was actually driven to produce an impeachment all along, and that's where the dissatisfaction with Jerry Nadler, she's the source of it.
She was actually just as reluctant, maybe even a little more so early on than Jerry Nadler, actually. She was very much pushed by the squad, and it does get into that. She had at some point maybe determined that she was going to have to move forward on this.
Because she might face a revolt on her own hands if she did not.
And she did. She did face a revolt from the squad. She thought she would quash that rebellion pretty easily. She did not. They completely rolled her. And as you might remember, AOC did the tried and true Democratic favorite pastime of playing the race card, but she did it against Pelosi, and that was a problem for Pelosi. Pelosi eventually had to concede to a lot of squad demands. Moreover, these Democrats who campaigned as moderates in the 2018 in red and purple districts, they gave Pelosi that majority in 2018. She wanted to protect the moderates early on. However, the moderates became more fearful of a primary than anything else. And I believe the squad would lead primaries in these various red and purple districts across the country. And that became a bigger fear for moderates and establishment Democrats than anything else. And that's a bigger, an underlying theme throughout my book, Abuse of Power.
I think this may have application, Fred, to the presidential election. Given the diminishing mental capacity of Joe Biden, and who I think, frankly, sadly, I think he has dementia. If you're rolling Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, on her second term of Speaker of the House, if you're rolling her like that with the power base that she has within the Democratic Party, what would they do if Joe Biden won the presidency and everybody knows, where he is at with his own health? I think you could apply a parallel here, couldn't you, Fred? That the same people that pushed Nancy Pelosi, despite her standing in the party, to do something she was originally reluctant to do and then forced her to go all in because of internal politics, what would they do with a clear gatekeeper, symbolic figurehead like a Joe Biden? What would they do behind the scenes in that environment?
That's a good question. We don't know yet, but Capitol Hill source that I talked to that was really well placed in this said, quote, that there is a direct parallel between the rise of the squad and impeachment. So that's a pretty defining issue. And if they were able to get their way, basically four people were able to bully the rest of Congress on that front. It is interesting because we're going to see a larger squad in this next election. Now Elliot Engel was beaten in his primary, so they're growing in numbers, and they're going to have a larger contingency of young, very aggressive progressives going into the next term, no matter who has the majority.
What mistakes did Team Trump make here, Fred?
One I think was really calling it the perfect call. It wasn't. I think a lot of people wished he had handled the call with Zelensky a little bit differently. Maybe just, I think also maybe even focusing so much on Ukraine election meddling, which the book Abuse of Power, it does demonstrate there was Ukraine election meddling in 2016 in favoring Hillary Clinton and trying to harm Donald Trump. However, a misstep from Trump, I think, was maybe being a sore winner, even worrying about this kind of thing.
You think he should never have revisited the topic, is what I hear you saying?
Yeah,
should just let that sleeping dog lie, basically.
Yeah, I think so. I even make some defense in this book of Mick Mulvaney, when he was chief of staff. He made this kind of bold claim, get over it. Politics has a place in foreign policy. Well, yes, it does. There's always been some type of quid pro quo, for lack of a better term, on the level of foreign policy, and that's happened. We've seen with this some of the South American countries. The White House put some strings attached to funding to these countries to control their immigration. We've seen various types of quid pro quo, if you have to call it that, going back a long way with foreign aid and foreign engagement. So when I think Mick Mulvaney actually said some honest things, he did not admit to he did not say that the weaponry, that the military assistance was tied in any way to investigating the Bidens or investigating Democrats. He said that they wanted to look into basically Ukraine, CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike might have been a little bit off as well. So, but
name of the book, Abuse of Power, Inside the 3-Year Campaign to Impeach Donald Trump. Fred Lucas over at the Heritage Foundation. Fred, thank you for joining us, and good luck with the book, brother. Appreciate your efforts. All right, take care.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Steve.
You bet. Guys, let's go back and revisit what I said at the end of the last segment. Trying to put myself in the other in the Democratic Party's shoes, and trying to figure out how, if I were them, I would want to contrive a momentum shift back in an environment that is friendly to me, and that would be to leverage all of my media into a panic porn about waves associated with students returning to schools, things of that nature. And that's why we have to send all the kids home, shut down all the schools across the country. And that my prediction is that's going to be their final play these next 63 days. And really it's probably the next 40 days, because they've got to, the Trump campaign has succeeded in two things here. They got Biden out of the basement, and Biden has to debate now. He has to. If Biden doesn't debate, the election's over. He has to he has to show up now. His campaign, he doesn't have a lead that could absorb that hit. He has to show up now. And that was a key part of their strategy for the Trump campaign, right? Was to get Biden on that stage in front of 100 million people.
Yes.
So they have to see stuff like what was in Aaron's montage, right? And you got to get Biden out of the basement and with the wear and tear of actually campaigning. Okay. So they've succeeded in that, or the environment has, for that matter. If I were on the other side, to me, I've got 40 days before that first debate, somewhere around there, whenever it takes place. But I got to do it before that first debate. And I got to get the kids sent home from school And I've got to try to reassert the lockdown narrative. And I think the Trump presidency, this is where politics is policy and policy is politics. The Trump presidency has got to be far more bulldogged and effective at pushing through that than they were, frankly, much of this year up against the panic porn from the moment that they extended the 15 days to slow the spread. Thoughts on that, Todd?
You're, of course, right, but I think they've got to do it really quickly. I mean, if there's any truth to this Big Ten thing getting turned around, all of these cases on campus that are happening, but if they're weakened, there's no piles of ash. In South Dakota, forget the name of the town, the motorcycle rally.
Sturber, is that what it was? Something
Sturgis. We know again, now it's been enough 2 to 3 weeks.
Right.
No pile of ash.
Right.
They've got to do, I mean, their window is very narrow. They've got like 2 weeks to play that hand. Otherwise, I think it's gone.
So you don't even think they have 40 days? They got to play it like in the month of September. They have to play that.
How do they do it if we're going to fill in football stadiums full of people?
Because that's a good point. Because we got these college football NFL starts in the next couple of weeks. We had a game already. The NFL starts in a couple of weeks. That's a good point.
You're right about the hand existing.
High school football is going on in about 29 states, I think, across the country already.
Last weekend over here in Iowa, young men are hitting each other at full speed again. It's happening.
Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, I think what we're hearing again, and through that interview that we just heard as well, these people will do anything by hook and by hook or by crook. I mean, you can't. They have to play. If you are anything of what's left in America and you're in politics, you have to play simultaneously for the future. You have to look 5-6 steps down the road, and you have to take advantage of whatever the environment is presenting you right here and right now. And so the Trump campaign can't be concerned with this yet, but they need to be thinking about it. There's a piece out at Axios today talking about how some Michael Bloomberg-funded Democrat consulting group is sounding the alarm bells that because of mail-in voting, Trump could win in a landslide on election night, but then in the ensuing, days and weeks later, it's actually going to be Biden who's going to win. They're just going to lout this hanging Chad themselves to death as well. So there are going to be myriads of things that the Trump campaign is going to have to contend with from here on in, but it's looking good right now.
Fake news or not, coming your way next. Greetings. Welcome back. Hour 2, live and on demand here on BlazeTV radio podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre and all of you. Let us know what you think about what we think by emailing the program, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter @Steve Deace Show. Parler @Steve Deace. YouTube.com/Steve Deace is now where you can go as well to get samples of this show that you can view for free and then share with others. And the last name is DEACE. If you're a podcast listener, we love you every bit as much as everyone else. Please, though, do us 2 favors if you haven't done so already. Subscribe to the podcast. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're podcasting from. And then leave us a 5-star review if you like us. Thousands of you have done this for the show already. We could use thousands more. Those things help the show to grow. Thanks to all of you who have done those things for us already. And also, don't forget my new book, A Nefarious Carol, a novella sequel to A Nefarious Plot, comes out December the 15th. Pre-sales are available right now at Amazon.com if you want to go there. Amazon.com, A Nefarious Carol. Let's get to fake news or not. Brought to you by Brickhouse. Now that America is opening up, that doesn't mean, though, everything with our health is okay. We still got to wash our hands, social distance every now and then. And we still need our field of greens from Brickhouse Nutrition. One scoop has a full serving of real USDA certified organic fruits and vegetables, which boost energy, support a healthy immune system. COVID, by the way, we've talked about this, the common comorbidities involving the immune system. So strengthen yours with a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, and Field of Greens can do that. It's also prebiotic and probiotic. Why does that matter? Well, that helps with the gut health. What's the largest immunity system in the body? It's the gut. All right. So 1 scoop, you put it in a glass of water, stir, mix it up, and you're done. And right now you can save 15% off your first order with the offer code Steve at BrickHouseSteve.com. Get 15% off your first order of Field of Greens. Look at this, like a green machine, one of those drinks without the 90 grams of sugar That's essentially what this is. All right. You can get an offer code Steve, get 15% off at brickhousesteve.com. And if you want to subscribe, have it come to your house every single month, they'll take another 10% off every month with that promo code Steve as well. brickhousesteve.com, promo code Steve. All right, we're going to do something, that we used to do with Fake News or Not, that we don't do very often anymore. But I've also never seen a presidential candidate have to feel like they have to reboot their candidacy right after the convention either. Normally you got a few months to think about that convention and the messages you want to send and the faces you want to show, right?
Yeah. Well, Joe Biden called and said, just wait till we have our convention.
Yes. Well, apparently, we've heard all year long, wait 2 weeks. Well, apparently we had to wait 2 weeks for the real Democratic convention. They had the convention, then they saw the Republicans have theirs, and like, oh bleep. All right, here's what we really meant, guys. 2 weeks. All right. So 2 weeks to flatten their own curve that's trending downward at the moment. And yesterday he attempted to hit that reboot in Pittsburgh. It was originally going to be an event, then it was going to be a press conference. It just turned out to be Dementia Joe in front of a teleprompter, reading statements and then not taking any questions for about 15 minutes. I have selected 5 clips from this. And since I know you guys are going to ask me, what's the context? And I almost never tell you what I want the context to be because I want to know what you think the context is, right? This time, though, I'm going to provide a context, okay? Is this effective, both the messaging as well as the messenger, in what its desired outcome is? The desired outcome here is to reboot Biden's campaign and try to recast him now as a figure of the old moderate Democratic establishment, okay? So that's, when I ask you, is this fake news or not, did this clip accomplish its desired goal, all right?
Got it.
We begin with Biden attempting to attack Trump on the virus.
COVID has taken this year, just since the outbreak, has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's the lives. When you think about it, more lives this year than any other year for the past 100 years.
Todd, fake news or not?
Well, let's go to the second part. The messenger, yikes. No, not effective. The first part, the messenger.
Can I ask you a question I've been wrestling with since we brought this up again? I really feel bad dunking on an old dude who's clearly anywhere from senile to riddled with dementia. I'm also pushing 50, and therefore, by the grace of God, go I here in the not too distant future, right? I feel bad about it. On the other hand, in this context, if a major American political party chose to put this in front of us and then say, you need to entrust your future to this, should I? Or should I say, folks, now he's not just Grandpa Joe. You're telling me to put my future, my kids' future, my business's future in the hands of somebody who clearly isn't competent. So do I need to mercifully point that out still with a disclaimer or not? What do you think?
No.
This is not really him.
This is the president of the United States, and he's being propped up by people who are winking and nodding about burning cities down and lying about science. So no, don't waste another second thinking about that anymore.
All right, finish your answer. Sorry about that interruption.
No. So, and I think that's there's no way the messenger is going to be good. So it's just about the messaging. No, that's not effective. We're right now we're returning to school. We're returning to a lot of things. To stamp fear on the hearts of everybody at this moment is not a hopeful message. You can reset what we've gone through, but he's clearly trying to keep the fear gin up there. That's not effective.
Aaron, what do you think?
And it varies whether it's Biden himself or his handlers. Of course, the messenger there is very bad, but whether it's his handlers who are developing whatever that message is, it's really, really sloppy and really haphazard because in a span of a week, I believe it was a week, maybe a week and a half, Biden says if he were president, he'd lock down the country again. wants a national mask mandate. A week later, or however long it was, just at the end of last week, he started airing an ad in Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, showing pictures of empty Michigan stadiums, Camp Randall stadiums, Beaver stadiums, saying, if I'm elected president, we'll get back in the game. It didn't have to be this way. Pick a message. But obviously, they're trying to play both sides of this. If I was president, we wouldn't be here right now. But if I was president, I'd lock down things all over again. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So this whole thing, I mean, part of me wanted to say it's true news because that is essential. That is that is concentrated Joe Biden right now. It's both the sad state of the man and the messaging of his necromancers. So that is the most accurate window into the soul of the Joe Biden campaign. So for that reason, I think it's true news. But of course, the actual content is fake.
I can't wait to get you guys' reaction and analysis to this clip. This is Joe Biden yesterday attempting to be glib.
Tomorrow and the day after and the day after, because she'll never give up. White, black, Latino, Asian American, Native Americans, everybody. I'm in this campaign for you, no matter your color, no matter your zip code, no matter your politics. When I think of the presidency, I don't think about myself. It isn't about my brand. It's about you, the American people. We can do better, and we have to do better. And I promise you this, we will do better. You know, the road back begins now in this campaign. You know me. You know my heart. You know my story, my family story. Ask yourself, do I look like a radical socialist with a soft spot for rioters? Really?
I'm not going to say a word about my own thoughts because I want to know what you guys think first. Aaron, fake news or not?
Do I look like a radical with a soft spot for rioters? That's his words. Dude, if you're answering, or I'm sorry, if you're asking that question, somewhere along the way, your handlers or yourself took a wrong turn. If you're standing in front of a nation and saying something along the lines of, you know, if I did it.
Yeah.
Yo, that's fake news.
I'm glad. No, I'm going to let you comment first, Todd. I'm going to keep my promise. I'll be quiet. Go ahead, Todd.
Well, the first, 3/4 of that was, you know, he wasn't bumbling, rumbling, stumbling. Mm-hmm. It was kind of sounded like old Joe. Mm-hmm. But that last part, it was so open that, like, what do you need me to be? Do you need me to be that? I'm good. If not, otherwise I'll go old Joe. It's not something like any president in any party throughout American history leaves that kind of thing open-ended. You say the opposite of that thing. You say year and no further. You say, what can my country do for you? You know, you make declaratives. You do not just float trial balloons of chaos like that, ever.
You guys had the same analysis. You both did. I thought the opening of that clip is very strong, actually. And if you've been involved or informed in politics for a long period of time in America, you know Joe Biden because he's been a fixture in American politics since basically my entire life now. And the opening of that clip was kind of now just like a 75-year-old version of the Joe Biden you've seen his entire career, right? Mm-hmm. Just a little bit older. You know, a little more tread on the tires, but yeah, that's Joe Biden. That's how he communicates, okay? But at the end, and I think if he just would have stopped there, that is a very effective clip. You could put that in an ad if you're them, spread that around, and you use that message to kind of counter the narrative against you right now. But at the end, and you can tell he's not reading one of the teleprompters on the side, that this is now coming, it's looking straight at you, where it kind of feels like it's kind of coming from the heart, right? But that part at the end, first of all, Aaron, I completely agree. If you are verbalizing something like that, you're injecting that into your own ecosphere, okay? the fact that you feel like you have to answer that is bad, number one. And then I don't know what he does there with his face and his eyes, right? Where it's clear that they like worked on this and there was he was coached to kind of give a certain vibe, and it just felt like he dunked on himself, right? You know what I mean? Like he just take yes for an answer. You had the sale, and now I'm like, not so sure. I don't know. The ending of that I found unsettling.
Well, you compare it to the great speeches, the only thing we have to fear itself. And he's trying, that's like his declarative.
Yeah.
Do
I look like a socialist with a soft spot for rioters? I don't know. They got to work on I think the performance angle of that one a little bit more. They're going to trot that one out again.
Well, if that's you, if your team is feeding that to you, your team sucks.
Yeah. There is a performance there. I mean, his facial contortions and everything are dramatically different than they are the whole rest of that clip. He's clearly trying to communicate a certain body language, and that's not what got communicated, at least not to us. All right. This is Joe Biden, essentially. I don't know how else to put this. He's blackmailing people to vote for him. I don't know how else to say it. Here it is.
Supremacists and vigilantes with assault weapons, often better armed than the police, often in the middle of the violence at the protesters and aiming it there. And because tens of millions of Americans simply don't trust this president to respect their rights, to hear their concerns, or to protect them. It doesn't have to be this way. When President Obama and I were in the White House, we had to defend federal property. We did it. We didn't see it. You didn't see us whipping up fears around the deployment of secret federal troops. We just did our job, and the federal property was protected. When President Obama and I were in office, we didn't look at cities as Democratic or Republican run. These are American cities. But Trump doesn't see himself as president for all of America. Frankly, I believe if I were president today, the country would be safer and we'd be seeing a lot less violence. And here's why.
One of the things he goes on to say there is, do you really believe if Trump is reelected, the protest will go away? So, Aaron, fake news or not?
This is fake news. As the weird, the diabolical nature of the necromancers of Joe Biden, who know and have known, I have to believe, that they're just using, sadly, again, a husk or shell of what the man used to be in order to ride him and use him for their own progressive, terrible political purposes, using an old man riddled with dementia for their own purposes. As diabolical as that is, I don't understand what their dang messaging is. They're talking out of, surely if they're that diabolical, they can come up with a little bit more intelligent of messaging. Because in that clip we heard, okay, so there was violence and things like that during your tenure as well. But I thought this was only under Trump's America. But now you're saying that if you continue to vote, if you vote for Trump again, or if he's reelected, it's going to continue. I just don't understand how they're trying to. I don't understand what they're trying to do here. The messaging is incredibly confusing. It's very lukewarm. And when you present it in that manner, like Barack Obama, just because of his mannerisms and the way, and he's a likable guy, he could have said that. And most people would be, oh, okay. But Joe Biden, when he's just obviously reading off of a teleprompter and fumbling over his words, and then you actually analyze the message a little bit itself, it's just, it doesn't go anywhere or do anything.
What you're describing is what we talked about a couple weeks ago when we looked at that data point, that by 20 points, people were voting that were supporting him, were voting against Trump and not for him. And how and why I said it's possible his candidacy is a bubble. You cannot sustain that. Ultimately, for president, people want to vote for somebody. It is why, since we started keeping the stat in 1960, with the advent of the television era, every presidential candidate that had the higher favorables has won every single time. The one exception to that was in 2016. But they were both so far underwater. They both had negative favorability ratings, so it was kind of an irrelevant stat. But in the end, we want to vote for someone for president. We're going to see this person on our screen every day for the next 4 years. We want to like them. We want to admire them in some way, or at least think that they're cool. And that's the problem. Is he's what you're saying, Aaron? There that I hear anyway is he's trying to take Barack Obama's messaging without Barack Obama's packaging.
Yeah.
And that dog just doesn't hunt.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Todd, your thoughts?
Oh, this is the most traditionally fake news of everything. When he talks about we didn't see those as red cities or blue cities. We saw these as American cities. Come on. You are the people of bitter clingers and guns and religion.
Exactly.
And Obama's wife, this is the first time I've ever been proud of my country. And you're also responsible for taking the Benghazi issue and talking about a videotape from a crazy Bible. No. You were never that. That one just flat out, that one makes me the most mad. And that's why I'll never because
you feel it as gaslighting.
Oh, and it's and why I won't give Biden. No, sorry. Whatever lucid moments you have when you're not riddled by dementia, you should know better and you should get out if you're going to do this. No.
All right. Remember in the first, maybe it was by the second debate, Biden had essentially taken back every one of his previous positions we call moderate today. His previous support of the Hyde Amendment, he was going to ban fracking and all this kind of stuff, right? Okay. And so by the end of the second Democratic debate, he had given up all the reasons you'd actually vote for him. He wasn't going to be a soft landing at all. He attempts to address one of those issues in this clip.
That will restore a sense of security for working families. We won't just build things back the way they were before. We're going to build them back better with good paying jobs, building our nation's roads, bridges, solar arrays, windmills, with investments in our healthcare and childcare workers so they get the pay and dignity they deserve while easing the financial burdens on millions of families. With a clean energy strategy that is a place for the energy workers right here in Western Pennsylvania. I am not banning fracking. Let me say that again. I am not banning fracking.
All right. Todd, fake news or not?
Well, fake news because I don't. The thrust of progressivism is that there's no thing within the realm of science. We're learning that every single day for the last 6 months. That won't be lied about, bent, twisted. For whatever reason he's saying that now, he will have an opposite reason why it must be done here in just a month, because now we know something different. He can't be trusted about that.
But is that effective? I didn't ask you about the merit of the argument. Remember, that's not the context of this challenge. The challenge is that an effective pivot? Because that's what they're trying to do.
No, because it's not believable.
Okay. Aaron, what do you think?
If I can't frack, I can't frack, man. I mean, listen, we're talking about fracking. Not a game. We talking about fracking. Seriously? This is did you did the Biden necromancers in their basement have a target and some darts, and they had a bunch of moderate issues, and they just threw, oh yeah, fracking. We're not against fracking now. Get out there and say that, Joe. We're talking about fracking. I mean, this is of all the issues right now pressing America.
It's not believable.
It's fracking.
You're saying it seems like an odd place
to plant your moderate
flag, even in Pennsylvania.
I haven't heard that word this year, guys. I'm not joking. Where did this come from?
I don't know. They must have some polling focus grouping saying that issue was killing them in Pennsylvania. And it sounds to me, I thought of all the videos we had, this one was the most effective. If only because it's the kind of thing you've heard Joe Biden say his entire political career. until about 10 months ago, right? Okay, this is more of your traditional Democratic messaging, but the fact that they just chose to that's the one we're going with. It does, I think, also feed the notion, and seems like what you're kind of getting at, Aaron, that this entire candidacy is contrived.
Yeah.
Here are the talking points we need you to say today, Joe. Okay.
Here's what in my head, I just realized why. Because this is Kristi Noem and South Dakota is very much kind of being billed, and fracking is big up in the Dakotas. Is the new Texas, and she's riding with that. I mean,
putting out ads, hey, come move to our state. If your state hates freedom, we love you here. So
this felt like what we always experience every 4 years in Iowa and ethanol. They felt that.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah.
And my point, nobody really believes it. Everybody's just checking boxes and like, can we just do the perfunctory nonsense and get on with it? Right. That's what it felt like. It's not believable. It's important, fracking, ethanol, whatever, but no one believes anybody really cares.
That this is your front burner, read my lips, I'm not banning fracking.
Yes.
Right? Okay. One more clip. This is Biden now attempting to pivot to attack Trump on lockdowns and the economy.
Plan he doesn't have and the pain being felt by millions of Americans. He said this week, and I quote, "You better vote for me or you're going to have the greatest depression you've ever seen." Does he not understand and see the tens of millions of people who've had to file for unemployment this year so far? The people who won't be able to make next month's rent payment? The people who lost wages while the cost of groceries have gone up dramatically? President Obama and I stopped the Depression in 2009. We took a bad economy that was falling and turned it around. Trump took a good economy and drove it back into the ditch.
All right, Aaron, fake news or not?
Fake news, but this, I mean, if the roles were reversed as well, it's always when the economy is good, the previous occupant of the White House, they try to take all the credit. When the economy is bad, the previous occupant always says, well, I made it good and they drove it into the ground. This is just boilerplate economic sniping. As far as the actual merits to the argument there, I mean, guys, it's not up for debate. The jobs numbers under Trump, now whether or not they were, great paying jobs, all of the best metrics were heading up. We're heading upwards. And yes, you can. There's going to be 5 listeners. Well, this metric right here. It was doing well. It was doing better, getting better. And so as far as that talking point goes, driving it into the ditch, guys, this is the same dude who said like 2 weeks ago, he said he was going to lock us back down again. So again, it's fake news.
Todd?
Yeah, it's utterly fake news. The best that he could do is remind people just very loosely about 2009, and we helped turn things around. But once you go into specifics about how Trump did this, that's you can't make that hold up. This economy, as if there was no such thing as this this virus and the lockdowns, because you remind people, like Aaron said, the messaging is just chaotic.
To me, this messaging is their path to winning the election. The problem is they preemptively stifled it.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, Joe Biden at the time that Trump was trying to use the White House as a bully pulpit for the reopening of schools. It's not safe. If I was president, all the schools would be shut down. Okay. We then have a convention where there's really no moderation on this at all. He then gives an interview after the convention where he says, absolutely, we have to lock everything back down again. I'd listen to the experts. We got to lock it back down. If they had never done any of those things, I had warned throughout the the darkest times of the lockdown, that eventually they were going to pivot to blaming Trump for the crash of the economy, for doing what they wanted him to do, which was lock things down. They never got there. Now, I suspect they're going to try to do that between now and Election Day, but to me, they missed the window to do so. The time to do that was in May and June, and now they're just too much on record that it's not safe, that we shouldn't return. And lockdown is too popular with a segment of their own base, frankly. Okay, that's why Trump is calling Kevin Warren and not calling Larry Scott, the commissioner of the Pac-12. They don't want to play football. They want to live in fear out there. I mean, they're very proud of the fact they're not playing. I mean, I listened to the David Shaw, the Stanford coach. Our players are like elated they didn't have to play football this year. It's like a relief. Okay, great. Cool. I mean, they're gonna wait for a couple vaccines before they play football. Pac-12 football, we're gonna be like in 2025. We're gonna be like, remember when the Pac-12 played football? Okay, there's a reason he's not calling them. It's not open for debate out there. This is popular with a sizable portion of their own base. So it's too late, I think, to make that pivot now. And that's why I think the more likely play, as I said last hour, is they're going to try to contrive a panic porn second wave to shut the schools back down. They are team lockdown. Joe Biden had months that he could have pivoted, and Trump left that, just as they have left Trump all kinds of room now to occupy the mainstream instinctive thought of America. Trump left them this room for months. Right. They could have occupied this space. They chose not to. They made that choice. And they thought, hey, running hard left, running kook left, lock it all down, wait until Big Pharma tells us they've got a fake vaccine. That's our play. Okay, you made that bed now. The idea that you're going to pivot away from this, it's like Michael Dukakis coming out and saying, hey, I'm going to have more death penalty than George H.W. Bush after the Willie Horton ad comes out. It's just not believable. Everybody knows what your brand is now at this point. Pop Culture Tuesday is next. Have you ever seen people go running with their dogs?
I run with my dog.
You do run with your dog?
Yeah.
Who keeps up?
Well, now my dog is a 9, and she's having a harder time keeping up with me. It's just come to that point.
Because she's really 63, right? In dog years?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But beforehand, I had to work.
Did you? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine running with my dog. Could you imagine me out there with our little Bichon running around the neighborhood?
No, that's not a running dog.
That's not a picture that we want to think of.
No. You think you got made fun of last week for something to do with your dog? I can't remember what it was.
Cap's just out there trying to sniff stuff. I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
Right? All right. Nevertheless, and people run with their dogs, right? It's a good way to get your dog in shape, keep them healthy, those kinds of things. But you need to take a look at your dog's diet, though, as well, because a lot of the foods we're feeding our dogs these days are sterilized of the good stuff, just like a lot of the foods that we do, and for the same reasons. So they can be mass-produced for a long shelf life. And so a lot of those prebiotics and probiotics, omega oils, vitamins and minerals are taken out. And just like we need supplements to put that stuff back in, so do our pets as well. That's where Rough Greens VitaSmart comes in. It is not a pet food. It's a pet food supplement. And it's just a powder you put on your pet's food each day. And apparently it tastes great too, because our dog Cap absolutely loves this stuff. And it puts all the good stuff missing from your pet's food right back in their food. If you want to give it a shot right now and see if you don't see a difference in your dog in 2 weeks or less, try the 14-day Jumpstart Challenge today for just $14.95 at roughgreens.com/blaze. That's RUFF for Rough Greens, RUFF for roughgreens.com/blaze. So over the weekend, I wrote a story for SI that has gone viral for Sports Illustrated. And some of you may or may not know, I own the Michigan site on the Sports Illustrated network. And I've been very frustrated at the debate about whether the Big Ten should play or not. Because what's left out of this whole debate is data. And you know me, I'm into the data. I want to know, what's the data say? Guys, I love my college football. If the data said it wasn't safe to play, I'd be like, as much as it would suck, I don't think they should play. Okay, I'm a follow the data guy, even if it takes me where I don't want it to go. And I put this piece together because there's a lot of instinctive debating happening here. And on one side, it's instinctively, we play football. And on the other side, it's instinctively, dude, we got a Karen up here. But what does the actual data say? And I would venture to guess that a lot of people on both sides of this argument have, unless they're fans of this show and maybe a few others, have probably never seen any of this data. They're just reacting to what they see in the media. Or, and that's where the Karen concept comes from with the panic porn, or because you know that usually the people that peddling that are lying to you. You just instinctively rebel against it, but you can't really quantify why you're not down to clown. You just know that these are the same people that lied to me about Russian collusion and Kavanaugh, right? And so I know that I don't know why they're lying to me. I just assume they must be lying to me about this.
Fair instinct to have.
I'm not telling you not to act on that, okay? But if you want to persuade people in an argument, that you're going to reach a lot of the people that already have the same instincts as you do with that argument. But if you want to persuade people that maybe they don't have those instincts, you got to have data. Okay? And so over the weekend for SI, I wrote this piece looking at the data in the Big Ten. And I want to share it this week for Pop Culture Tuesday at the intersection between pop culture and conservatism, especially now today. We were already going to do this, but now we have word from the president, and the Big Ten has just confirmed that a conversation did take place between the President of the United States and Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren. The Big Ten statement is interesting. The White House reached out to us, almost like they need to, hey, we're not talking to Orange Man bad. That actually helps Trump, I think, actually more. This shows him actually taking initiative, doing stuff. It goes to what I said last hour. He was not passive this time, as he was with the rioting in June. This time, he acted. He went right at the city of Portland. He went right at the governor of Wisconsin. His messaging is very pointed, sharp, on the money. He picked up the phone. He called the governor or the commissioner of the Big Ten. See, whoever initiates is the adult. Whoever initiates is the alpha. And the president should be the initiator and should be the alpha. I think it looks kind of bad, actually, if Kevin Warren says, I had to call the president because they couldn't get this virus under control. We're trying to play football, right?
All these optics are the reason he could sweep the Midwest.
Yes. Him picking up the phone and saying, guys, this is the president calling. What you doing?
Yeah.
Okay? That, to me, is an alpha move. People want their president, Republican or Democrat, to be an alpha. That's what they want. Okay? So let me share this data with you. And this is as of Saturday at noon when I wrote this piece. All right? So here's what I put in this article for Sports Illustrated that has now gone viral. I just got an email or a text from a buddy of mine. The Bongino Report actually put this up as well. So thank you. According to CDC, only 6% of deaths can be directly tied to having died from COVID as opposed to with COVID, meaning 94% of those who have sadly perished had other pre-existing comorbidities that could have led to their deaths. Given the age and prime health of college football players, this is a key data point. That's why I led with it. How many college football players have a pre-existing comorbidity? Now, there are some. The quarterback at TCU, Max Duggan, who's from Iowa, actually. It was because of the testing they have done with COVID and then the attention to cardiac inflammation as a result of a viral outbreak that they did find in a previously unidentified pre-existing condition with him that left untreated could have been a serious problem with his heart. And now because of this, they're going to spend the year treating it. Hopefully he can return to playing football again next year. All right, so there will be some, but by and large, how many 20-year-old football players have a pre-existing comorbidity? Number's going to be really low, guys. That's why the Max Duggan news at TCU made national news, because it's not often you find a pre-existing pre-existing morbidity with a college football player. There was one at another school. I think it was one of the Group of 5 schools. I can't remember now. And he thanked the school and said, hey, thankfully you guys were testing for this and found it. Otherwise, I'd have never known about this. So thank you.
And these pre-existing, it's not like it's unheard of, but it's extremely rare. Like I can think of maybe 1 or 2 Hawkeye football players in my life who just stopped playing because they found they had an issue with their heart. And they're like, you know what, the chances of me making it at the next level are pretty slim anyway. So I'm just
going
to hang it up.
Next data point, according to CDC, confirmed hospitalizations for COVID nationwide are now at their lowest total since March 21st. And of course, because I'm writing for Sports Illustrated, that isn't exactly a right-wing publication, I'm going to make sure I'm citing all of this data. And if I wrote this for the Blaze, I'd have to cite a point like that for anybody. Okay, but given Sports Illustrated's political bent, which is fine, it's they can have any political bent they want. I believe in freedom, but I understood that they were going to be very skeptical of me just stating these things. So all of this in the article is exceedingly documented. Okay, only 2.9%. Look at this stat. Only 2.9% of the available hospital beds in the Big Ten footprint are currently being used for COVID patients. Think about that.
The curve is flattened.
That's an amazing number. How did I get it? I went to the Beckett Healthcare Report, which has been stratifying this from the COVID tracking project. How many hospital beds and how many total hospital beds there are in each state, and how many in each state are being currently occupied for COVID patients. So that's where I got that number from. According to CDC, only 1.9% of ER visits nationwide are for COVID-like symptoms, which means 98.1% of Americans are going to the ER for something other than coronavirus. According to the latest active case numbers, only 0.26% of people living in the Big Ten footprint are an active confirmed case of coronavirus. This did not include the testing. I left that out of this. All right, so I'm not including the New York Times study on our testing flaws. I'm taking the testing numbers at face value. How did I get this? I went to Worldometer, which tracks this all in real time, and I went state by state. How many active cases were in each state in the Big Ten footprint? And then I divided it by about the 85.2 million people that live in the Big Ten footprint. And if you divide it by 85.2 million, you come up with 0.26% of people in the Big Ten footprint. Even with us exaggerating now our positive test cases by anywhere from 40 to 90%, only 0.26% of people in the Big Ten footprint are currently an active case for coronavirus. According to CDC, since March, only 1.5% of deaths to those aged 15 to 24 have been with COVID. 1.5% since the beginning of the pandemic. That's it. According to CDC, 15 to 24-year-olds represent 12.9% of the U.S. population, but just 0.2% of all COVID deaths. I talked about the NFL, which has completed training camps and is getting ready for the season. Right now, one player is on the NFL COVID reserve list. One player out of 2,560 players. One is on the confirmed, set apart, quarantined, COVID reserved list.
But they're in a bubble though, right?
They're not. They're not in a singular bubble. Each team is practicing at its own facility, but then the players go to a hotel or home that night, depending on that team's procedures. They're all contact traced. They all have their temperatures checked when they come into the facility every day. But they are not in a singular bubble like what's going on in the NHL, where they're all in Edmonton, I think it is, and another location. And then in the NBA, they're all in Orlando. They're not in a singular bubble.
They're doing it the Sweden way.
Yeah. And that's a proof of concept that can be emulated in a college setting as well. A leading cardiologist at the University of Michigan doesn't believe myocarditis, the heart inflammation, is enough of a concern to justify canceling football. A top genetic cardiologist at the prestigious Mayo Clinic has said the same. And so if the Big Ten, it leaked to some of its people in the media. Nicole Auerbach at The Athletic is basically, and she's a Michigan grad and a good college football reporter and nice on TV, but she essentially is a stenographer for the Big Ten. That's essentially what she is. And she's not alone, guys. There's all kinds of people in the media, right and left, that are stenographers for their sources. The Big Ten is one of her main sources. That's why she's on the Big Ten Network. When Nicole Auerbach has a breaking news story from the Big Ten, it's basically the Big Ten gave her the story, okay? And the Big Ten gave her the story that they were seeing an alarming amount of myocarditis cases from players, anywhere from 10 to 15, already in just the preliminary workouts they were doing. Well, as I point out in the Sports Illustrated article I wrote, why are they still letting those workouts go on then? Every school in the Big Ten is still doing these workouts, practicing every day. If you were seeing myocarditis flare-ups from these workouts, so you shut the season down, then why did you let these workouts go on? Why didn't you shut all the workouts down then, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want them to do that if they were seeing something like this?
Yes.
If that was your kid, wouldn't you be like, hey, shut them all down?
Yeah.
Then why is my kid still practicing then? What sense does that make? Answer, none. There have been 3 major testing innovations just since the Big Ten made its announcement, all with saliva-based tests. The University of Illinois, the NBA Players Association one through Yale University that costs just $4 a sample. Abbott Labs just announced one that they can sell to the public that is a self-contained one for just $5 a unit. So that was one of the main objections the Big Ten listed, was a lack of affordable, accurate testing. These are all emergency-approved, FDA-approved tests right out of their own footprint. One of them is. So that objection's been answered. So here's my question. Given how densely populated the Big Ten region is, 85.2 million people live in this region. How could we possibly get these numbers any lower without a meaningful vaccine? Not some Theraflu or a seasonal shot. A meaningful vaccine. And without that or natural herd immunity, if we're going to pretend that that doesn't exist, Sweden, then how do we get these numbers any lower? When is it safe to play then? How could these numbers be any lower without those two things among 85 million people? Gentlemen, your thoughts.
Well, the longer this goes on, and I'm even seeing this in some of the most Karen-y, panic porn star members of the Iowa football media, which is the team that I follow the most in the Big Ten, of course. Even they're like, come on, Big Ten. Let's come on. You're urinating on all of us and telling us that it's raining. Even some of those people who have been the most obnoxious about this entire thing, have borderline cheered for the season to be canceled, are now being like, wait, this is all you got for me? When those types of people are turning on you, you better repent, run for the hills. Essentially, you're on the wrong side of history, really wrong side of history. And here's the most disconcerting part, if you worry about optics at all in the Big Ten. All this would take is a statement saying, you know what, 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, what have you, we really honestly just wanted to err on the side of caution. We did not foresee these rapid testing kits becoming available. Some of our states still aren't doing that great, but others really, they continue to flatten the curve, and we salute them for that. And at this point, we believe it's safe to play come start October, middle of October. And we'll continue to monitor things now. We are going to, take a game out of the schedule. It's going to be an 8 game. They could easily mitigate this. Just saying, you know what? We didn't anticipate some of this good news that happened. So the only reasons that they would not do that, well, I think the only reasons that they wouldn't do that. Either A, they're just all really, really proud chickens, or 2, it's political.
That's well said. What do we add to that? Because they have the out. Yeah. Pardon me. As Aaron said, they have the out to save face now. That's why you're seeing even some of these Karens come around, because all the fig leaves are being ripped off. They don't have any excuses left, right? There's no valid reasons to justify this. I mean, they're playing high school football in Ohio and Indiana in Iowa, in Nebraska, in their own footprint right now. They're going to play high school football in New Jersey, guys. Second hardest hit state in the union. You can't justify this.
No, you can't. But that's the problem with the level of expert ego that educrats have. They so badly need this certain segments of life to stay in their lane because they're the ones that need to be trusted. For them to turn on that, they have to turn on their entire professional existence.
I think they're about to do that, though, because their professional existence is being threatened in ways they did not anticipate. Yep. All right, we're going to stick around and do the overtime. Hey, what happened if Bernie Sanders had been the nominee? How might the last few months have been different? We'll get into that in the overtime. For the rest of you, see you tomorrow. John 3:17.